Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Missing security guard found, 2 others dead at the hands of gunmen. Local government minister takes aim at JFJ for criticism of SOE. And later in sports, reggae girls to have dedicated training base at next year's World Cup. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shane Masters and here are the details. In an update on the death of 2 security guards from the China Harbour Engineering Company complex at Plantation Heights off the Mandela Highway last night, the 3rd security guard who went missing has been located. Now, the security guard turned himself in to the police and is being interviewed by officers attached to the Major Investigation Division. Now, head of operations for the St. Andrew South Police, Deputy Superintendent Coolidge Mento, says he is in good physical condition.
You can imagine, not only him, but even some of the other officers who turned up at the location, fellow co-workers, very traumatized. Many of them have, expressed not only shock, but grief, and no doubt will need some amount of counseling. He was in also a state of trauma and very shocked and also, very concerned. But again, happy he's alive. He's still able to give an account, and that is being done at the moment.
Now, the bodies of 2 of his colleagues were found on the compound shortly before midnight.
One of the bodies was found in the trunk of a Nissan motor car. The other body was found in some bushes some distance away.
Now, they have been identified as Lincoln Royal and Brandon Small. Local Government Minister Desmond McKenzie is this afternoon taking human rights group Jamaicans for Justice to task for their continued criticism of the government's use of states of emergency. He argues that the lack of support is adding to the country's crime problem. Despite reporting successes under the states of emergency, the Andrew Holness-led government continues to face pressure from human rights group Jamaicans for Justice, JFJ, about the constitutionality of the measure. Speaking on the morning agenda on Power 106 recently, Executive Director of the JFJ, Michael Jackson, says while the police say there are declines in murders for the periods the measure had been implemented, the gains are not sustainable. But local government minister Desmond McKenzie says some of those who are criticizing are doing so to remain relevant.
How many of these human rights groups know how some of the fatherless picnic, the motherless picnic in this country go to school, how they survive on a daily basis? But every time the government speaks about tackling crime, using the measures that are legally there, that our security forces ask us to implement, them jump up like they are newborn virgins.
He says the crime situation is so bad that countries have been warning their citizens to be careful when traveling to the island. The Canadian government last week issued a travel advisory warning its citizens to exercise a high degree of caution in Jamaica due to the high level of violent crime.
I wonder how they feel as human rights group to hear the Canadian government putting out an advisory, advising Canadians when they're coming here to take care in coming to Jamaica. I wonder how they feel as human rights people.
Mr. McKenzie says it's turbulent times for the country. He's therefore calling for a unified effort on the political front to deal with the crime monster.
I'm in support of the state of public emergency. I am supporting the police and the military in their drive to rid this country of this cancer. You hear what man in school say? Them finger stuck on the trigger. Fist fight is no longer what this country knows.
And Jamaicans for Justice, JFJ, is calling for constitutional reform to better protect the rights of all citizens. Now, the call comes with the observation of Human Rights Day celebrated on Saturday under the theme Dignity, Freedom and Justice for All. Executive Director at JFJ, Michael Jackson, acknowledges that Jamaica has made some progress in protecting human rights. However, she believes more laws need to be revised to protect the rights of all.
Other forms of discrimination, implementing laws that require equal protections, and those laws shall certainly reinforce the moral imperative of equality. However, I urge us to be careful when we're calling for laws to be changed, because we cannot give in to fear when we're making those changes to laws, because we all see the crime rate, and I think we're all fearful of it. But we say that fear, if not carefully managed, can cause us to make laws that undermine judicial discretion or may cause an already overburdened criminal justice system to be far worse off than it is right now.
Jamaicans will now be able to hold elected government officials accountable in real time with a new tool and a procurement tracker launched by the Jamaica Accountability Meter portal, JAMP. It's the latest in a suite of online offerings aimed at promoting public engagement and transparency between the government and citizens. The project was funded by the European Union with co-financing from the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, UK Aid, and the Open Society Foundations. Now, in highlighting features of the tool, JAMP Executive Director Jeanette Calder said citizens will be able to use it to track reports of misuse of public funds themselves.
JAMP collates those breaches, and through the access to information legislation, can you imagine, think about it for a second, that any of us in this room as citizens could write to any permanent secretary, any minister, any head of agency and say, this is what I saw in this annual report. What steps have you taken to remedy this? May I have the documentation to support that? That is amazing.
The tool will also be used for citizens to have direct communication with elected representatives and to track how the government gets and spends revenue.
It will give you information such as where is the source of the money. On the right-hand side, of course, the taxpayers at the top, but we have the different donations and the grants that's coming in. And on the left-hand side, we have the revenue. So we see how much we're paying in taxes versus loans. Appropriations in aid, let me just take the opportunity to quickly say that some public companies do well enough that they can actually contribute money back.
Ms. Calder was speaking at a forum at the Ligani Club in New Kingston on Thursday. And it's time for a break here on the Midday News, but please stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. A man was taken into custody by the St. Elizabeth police after he was caught in possession of stolen goods from a Santa Cruz gas mart on Monday. Reports are that the police caught the man carrying the stolen goods in his knapsack when they were out on their morning patrol. The man says he's from a Caledonia Road address in Mandeville, Manchester. Vendors at the Santa Cruz market are disgruntled because of directives from the municipal corporation to sell their produce from inside the market instead of at the market gate. Now, they say this will reduce their sales drastically as members of the public will not make any purchase once they have to go inside the market.
When the police come, when some come, he set a line and we obey the line. So why them are pushing a market on Christmas?
When a time
for make a little money. For 2 years now we are waiting. 2 years now we are waiting for Christmas. COVID take away Christmas from we and now we get it back. And then one can take it from we.
Me not going to China man and get every money. Rich have to rich and poor have to poor. What we going to do with it? And the people that are going to sue for their money. What we going to get it from? We want justice in a Santa Cruz market.
The vendors insist that they are not obstructing the flow of traffic in the parish and they have agreed to sell from inside the market on weekends. The vendors are also complaining that the market has an odor, but nothing has been done to address the problem. This, they say, makes it more challenging to sell from the inside. And it's now time for the Business Minute with Cody and Barrett.
J. Ray and Nephew says it has produced enough supply to meet the spike in Christmas demand for the local market, but will resurrect one of its dormant brands, Edwin Charlie, for the hotel trade. The company says it has enough supplies on hand to meet local needs, even if retail demand were to spike by 50% above normal levels during the Christmas season. It means that last year's supply constraints in relation to red label wine and white rum should not reoccur. And in business overseas, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen on Monday warned the EU was facing a gas shortage of 30 billion cubic meters of gas in 2023. This amid a global energy crisis sparked by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. According to von der Leyen, the EU had added nearly 50 gigawatts of renewable energy in 2022.
Despite the action that we have taken, we might still face a gap of up to 30 billion cubic meter of gas next year. The actions that we have set in motion will help cover part of this, but more is needed.
And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Codian Barrett.
And it's now time for the top regional and international stories. Here again is Codian Barrett.
In the region, the head of the World Food Program in Haiti says with armed gangs in charge of key transport routes, the country could see famine conditions unless a robust humanitarian aid plan is put in place. This comes as protest, widespread looting, and roadblocks brought the country to a standstill in September. According to the World Food Program, things are at a breaking point, and this crisis will not pass without humanitarian assistance. On the international scene, China will eliminate one of its digital services for COVID-19 trace tracking on Tuesday. The policy changes come after several public protests calling for an end to lockdowns and zero COVID measures. The government has sought to reassure the public that restrictions would continue to be dropped and travel, indoor dining and other economic activity will soon return to pre-pandemic conditions. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Codian Barrett.
And we head to a quick break. When we come back, Jordan Fort will have your midday sports report.